Hey, welcome back everyone to Manny School of Art. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today's video we're going to be taking a quick look at the element of space. Space to me is one of those elements that is often overlooked and underused when creating artwork. So we're going to take a look at what space is and then some of the ways that we can use it to improve our work. So what is space and how can we use it to improve our composition and our drawings? Well, space is nothing more than an area in which the artwork is going to be created. Whether you're working on paper or on a canvas or on a wall, if you're doing a mural, that's all it is. Think of it as the area that you're going to be working on, okay? Now, space can be positive or negative. When you look at an image that takes up portion of the space, you can refer to that image as being positive. So in this area, the stone and the bird are done in black to separate it from these areas here. These areas that go around the object and sometimes between the object are referred to as negative space. They are the empty spaces that surround the object. A real easy way to think about this is when you get your paper or your canvas or whatever it is that you're going to be working on, and it is blank, it is empty, think of that as being negative space. When you start adding on and you start drawing or painting your subjects, then you are adding your positive space. So the objects themselves are positive and the area around and in between the objects are negative. In his book, Dynamic Light and Shade, Bernd Horgard has some absolutely beautiful illustrations using only black and white. And one of my favorites is this one right here, where he uses positive and negative space to create this composition. And he refers to them as silhouettes. So you have the black areas or silhouettes, and then the white areas, he refers to them as reverse silhouettes. And you can see that both the positive and the negative are equally important. Okay, so I often get asked, what's more important, positive or negative space? Well, the answer is they actually work together. So this is a complex illustration and it takes a lot of planning. And one of the ways that you can do this is through the use of paper. Here's a simple little exercise that you can do with positive and negative space to help you with your composition. And for this exercise, what you're going to need is you're going to need a knife, you're going to need some scissors, you're going to need 2 different color papers, an eraser, and I'm going to be using a white pencil, charcoal pencil, so that I can erase my lines afterwards, and a cutting board. Okay. So what I've done is I've taken my white pencil and I've laid out one of my subjects that I plan to cut out. I put a little X on the areas that I plan to cut out. So those areas that have a little X on them are going to be the white areas, and the rest of it will remain the dark areas or the positive areas. Okay. If you want to create a reverse silhouette, you can also, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can cut out areas in your white area to create a reverse silhouette, or you can cut out areas with your light color paper and create a reverse silhouette that way. All right, so I finally got all my pieces cut out, and now I am ready to start building up this composition. And a composition is nothing more than an arrangement of components to create a desired effect. So I'm going to start with the ground, and I'm going to play around with these and see what that looks like. Okay. And the nice thing about this is that you can change your mind. So let's say that I want something simple here. If I want to create a lot of movement up here with animals and plants and stuff, then this would work fine. But if I wanted to do something where the land is a little bit more important, then I could do something like this. And now I'm creating almost like the feeling that something is coming out of a cave or something. Okay. For right now, I'm going to work with this. And then it's just a matter of playing around, adding things to see what it looks like. So if I place this over here, this is just an example, then I have more of an L-shaped composition here now. And I have some really cool positive and negative areas that really help break up this entire section. If I have a situation like this where it's a reverse silhouette and I decide to do this, then I would simply just cut out the rest of that little section. But I haven't made any final decisions yet, so I'm not going to cut out anything just yet. I can have the illusion of things coming from behind. So let's say that there's a little fish coming this way and it's coming from behind this coral. I could do something like that if I wanted to. Or I could place it next to it, or I could place it going towards it this way. Okay. So again, it's just really a matter of moving things around until you get an effect that you're trying, that that's what you're looking for. So I kind of like this and this because they kind of balance each other, but again, I haven't decided if that's what I want to do. And I feel like this area right here could probably use some reverse silhouette. So if I decide to do that, I'll either cut some stuff out of here, or I'll cut out some white areas from extra paper and put them on here. More than likely, this is what I'll do, because if I don't like the effect, I want to be able to take them away. And that's really what composition is all about. So, and it's a really effective way to get a feel for what your composition is going to look like when you just use positive and negative space. Now, once you have everything the way you want it, then you have to make a decision as to how you plan to finish it. Because remember, this is all about getting your composition. So there's several ways that I can finish this. I can glue everything down and leave it black and white, just like this. Or I can carefully use these as templates and trace them with a pencil, and then add colors or watercolors or acrylics or whatever I want. Or I can glue everything down, scan it into the computer, and then do it digitally. So lots and lots of different ways that you can finish your composition. If you tend to struggle with composition, then you might want to try something like this, because more often than not, when we work on composition, the problem is positive and negative space, the use of positive and negative space. And by doing this ahead of time, it'll actually give you a really good idea what the overall space is going to look like. Another way that you can use positive and negative space is to help you figure out, when you're doing a difficult drawing, the relationship between one portion of the drawing to the next. So what I typically do is I do this with my students, and it really helps them out a lot. I take the same image and I transform it into a silhouette. Okay, so I have two copies. One is a silhouette and one is the regular one. And then I place a shape around it, in this case a rectangle. Then I enlarge that rectangle by whatever percentage I want. So in this case, I think I went about 10% bigger, because I wanted them to actually make this a little bit bigger on this side. And now I got all these numbers around here that signify the negative areas. And then what we do is we actually look at the positive and the negative areas together, how they work together, to figure out how close things should be to one another. So let me show you a little bit of how this works. All right, so let's say that I want to do this arm right here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate how thick the arm is. So I'm going to start it off lightly in case I make a mistake. Then when I get here, I'm looking at this area right here, and I'm trying to figure out what is this shape right here. And it's kind of like a triangle, but it's got a little curve to it, like so. Makes this bump here, and then it comes down to transform into or to go into the thumb. So now I need to look at the negative area here to figure out how close the thumb actually gets to the webbing. So I'm estimating, and I'm trying to capture this shape right here, another triangle, and it goes like so. Now I can use the negative space to check to see whether this is too thin or too thick. Okay? I'm thinking that this should probably get a little bit closer here, just like so, to make the arm just a little bit more muscular right there. Okay. Now for this area here, I'm going to come down, in, and again, I'm looking at my negative area, down, in, at an angle right here. And then I can see that this area here is coming not perfectly across. It's starting to drop down. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to drop it down just a little bit. Now again, I can use the negative area to check myself. So like here, this looks pretty good. I feel like I need to round this off just a little bit more. Okay. But the overall negative area looks pretty good. Okay. Now when I get to number 4, here I have to estimate how close this portion of the leg gets to the border. Okay. So it's coming this way. It's going to go past the number 4, over, down, and then when I start working on the lower leg, it gets very, very close to the border. And then it goes away from the border, turns, and makes the tip of the foot. Directly behind here, right here. So I'm using this area here for my negative area, but now I need to use my positive area here to figure out where the back of the knee is. So it's directly behind, or not directly, but at an angle behind here. And I'm going to estimate where it is. Now, I need to make this calf muscle. And then it gets really thin here, but then it goes out, angled. Here's the heel, here's the arch, and here's the foot. Okay. So I'm using positive and negative space in order to help figure things out. Now this area here, I got to make sure that I thicken it up. So when I look here, I feel like this is too long, which is telling me that this is not quite thick enough. So I'm going to move this out a little bit here. And then it continues here. And then his buttocks is probably about here. Now the next thing that I want to do is figure out this foot here. Okay. So I'm going to estimate how wide is this portion of his foot. And I'm estimating that it's roughly about this wide. Okay. Then it comes over, down, and then it gets skinny back towards the heel. So I'm going to come over a little bit, down at a slight angle, and then here's the arch, and connect that to the heel. Okay. Now I can use this to figure out the spacing between this portion of his leg and his foot and his arm. So I can see that this portion goes up a little bit, and then it comes this way very close to this. So that space here, that negative space here, is actually pretty close to the tip of his toe. Then it starts to drop down. Then it starts to get wider. So now it's going away from the toe, away from the toe. And right here is where the hand is. And the thumb is directly behind this thing here. So positive and negative space can be used in combination with each other because they do work together. So here, I need to figure out how thick that arm's going to be. So I need to move this over just a little bit, which means that his buttock's going to be a little bit higher. And then here's the forearm. And then here's the wrist. And I feel like this needs to move up because this space is a little bit too small. So I'll move this up just a little bit more. Okay. So through the use of positive and negative space together, you can very quickly figure out your proportions. Once you have your proportions reasonably done, then you move on to the next step. So all you do is flip your paper over, and now you're going to start subdividing all of this positive area into smaller segments. So for example, here's the top of the head, and I'm coming roughly here. Next to the head, we're going to connect and separate the shoulder from the chest here. Move this muscle up, separate the forearm from the upper arm, and separate the fingers from each other. And so forth and so on. So if you're having trouble doing something like this with your drawing, now I would highly recommend that you start looking more closely at your negative areas, because your negative areas will help you figure out the relationships between one portion of your drawing and the next. Okay? And if you use that and you get this down, adding the rest actually becomes pretty easy. Okay. So there it is, a little overview on positive and negative space. So remember that the positive area is the object itself. The negative areas is the area around or within the object, depending on what the object is. Okay? And don't be afraid to use it when you're drawing, but also when you are composing. I am starting a new series soon that is going to be on perspective, and that will show you how to use space in a three-dimensional form. So when you're trying to create depth into your drawings and paintings, perspective comes into play. All right. I hope this video helps you. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and I will catch you on the next episode.